Picture this: March 2024, a 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback, a Super Bowl champion, a man who once signed the richest contract in NFL history. And on a random Monday morning, he gets a phone call telling him he's been cut. Not traded, not benched, released. The team that let him go would go on to eat a record-breaking $85 million in what's called dead cap, money owed to a player who no longer plays for you. It was, at the time, the single largest cap penalty in NFL history. And the man at the center of it wasn't a bust, a rookie, or a scandal case. It was Russell Wilson, one of the most decorated quarterbacks of his generation. This is a story of how that happened, and what he did next. Act 1. The Rise. To understand the fall, you have to understand the climb, because almost nobody expected Russell Wilson to make it in the first place. He came into the 2012 NFL Draft with a resume that should have made him a lock: a Big Ten title at Wisconsin, elite passing efficiency, the kind of production teams dream about. But he had one number scouts couldn't get past: 5'11". In a league obsessed with height at quarterback, that number pushed them all the way down to the 3rd round, pick 75. Seattle took a flyer on him, and almost nobody thought he'd start. He started week 1 of his rookie year. By his second season, he was a Super Bowl champion, leading the Seahawks to a dominant victory in Super Bowl 48. He'd go on to make the playoffs in 8 of his first 9 seasons, throw over 300 touchdown passes for Seattle, and become one of the most durable, productive quarterbacks the league had seen. A guy who almost never missed a start and almost always kept his team competitive. The money followed the winning. In 2015, Seattle locked him up with an $87.6 million extension. In 2019, he broke the market entirely, signing a 4-year, $140 million deal that made him, for a moment, the highest-paid player in NFL history. He wasn't just cashing checks either. That same year, after signing the deal, he handed each of his offensive linemen a $12,000 gift of Amazon stock as thanks for protecting him. It was vintage Russell Wilson. Polished, grateful, image-conscious. The guy who said the separation is in the preparation so often it became a personal brand. By 2021, Wilson was a fixture of NFL royalty. Married to Grammy-nominated artist Ciara, worth well over $100 million, fronting national ad campaigns for Nike, Bose, Amazon, and Alaska Airlines, he wasn't just an athlete cashing endorsement checks. He co-founded a mobile gaming company called Tally, backed by investors like Jeff Bezos, and launched a lifestyle apparel brand called Goodman Brand. Forbes regularly ranked him among the highest-earning athletes on the planet, factoring in an estimated 8 figures a year from sponsorships alone, layered on top of his football salary. In other words, Wilson had built the kind of diversified, image-driven empire that outlasts most playing careers. He wasn't just a quarterback, he was a brand, a business, and by most accounts, a genuinely careful steward of his own money. That detail matters because it's part of why the lost $100 million framing is so misleading. This wasn't a story about reckless spending, bad investments, or a collapsed business empire. It was about to become a story about football politics and a contract gone wrong. Then came Denver. Act 2. The deal that broke the bank. In March 2022, the Seahawks, Wilson's team for a full decade, traded him to the Denver Broncos in one of the biggest quarterback deals in NFL history. Seattle received an enormous haul: 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 3 players. Denver, in turn, believed they'd landed the missing piece for a franchise that hadn't had a real answer at quarterback since Peyton Manning retired. They didn't stop at the trade. Before Wilson had thrown a single pass in a Denver uniform, Denver signed him to a 5-year extension worth roughly $246.6 million, with well over $100 million guaranteed. It was, at the time, one of the richest contracts ever handed to an NFL player. The Broncos' general manager, George Patton, defended the aggressiveness of the move by pointing out how rare it is to get a franchise quarterback in his prime. Denver felt they had to take the swing. The swing missed. Wilson's first season in Denver was, by his standards, a disaster. He posted his career worst completion percentage. The offense sputtered under first-year head coach Nathaniel Hackett, and the Broncos finished 5-12. Hackett was fired before the season even ended. Sean Payton was brought in to fix things in 2023, and almost immediately tension began building between Payton and his $242 million quarterback. The breaking point came during the Broncos' bye week in 2023. According to reporting at the time, the team wanted Wilson to restructure his contract, specifically to adjust a $37 million injury guarantee that was set to trigger for 2025. Wilson said he was warned that if he and his representatives didn't cooperate, he'd lose his starting job. He refused to budge. Weeks later, with 2 games left in the season, Payton benched him anyway, a move widely seen as an attempt to avoid triggering that very guarantee. It didn't work. Because of how and when the Broncos ultimately released him in March 2024, they still owed him the money, and then some. The final bill? $85 million in dead cap, spread across 2 seasons, an NFL record. It represented over 20% of Denver's entire salary cap in a single year, tied to a player who by that point wasn't even on the roster. The public divorce played out almost like a soap opera. Payton, never shy in front of a microphone, made little secret of his frustration with the arrangement he'd inherited. Wilson, for his part, stayed publicly composed, the same disciplined, on-message persona he'd cultivated for over a decade, even as reports painted a picture of a locker room and coaching staff that had simply stopped believing the fit could work. When the relief finally came, Wilson didn't lash out. He posted a short statement that captured his brand perfectly. "Tough times don't last, but tough people do. God's got me. I am excited for what's next." It read like a man trying to will his next chapter into existence through sheer positivity, a tone some found inspiring and others found almost too polished for the moment. Here's the part worth being precise about because it gets flattened in the retelling. That $85 million wasn't money vanishing from Russell Wilson's bank account. It was the Broncos' cap penalty, the accounting scar left on their books for cutting him early. Wilson, thanks to his guaranteed money, still collected roughly $39 million from Denver for a season he didn't even play there. In terms of pure cash, he didn't personally lose $85 million or $100 million in the way a stock portfolio collapses. What he did lose was something harder to put a number on: the remaining years of a $242 million contract, the security of being a long-term franchise quarterback, and perhaps most painfully, his standing as an elite starter in the NFL. He went, almost overnight, from face of the franchise money to fighting for a roster spot. And the number that stuck to his name in headlines everywhere was $85 million, soon rounded up in the retelling to $100 million. The myth of the number became almost as powerful as the number itself. Act 3. Starting over. When Denver cut him loose, Wilson didn't get a hero's welcome anywhere. He signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 1-year deal worth just $1.2 million, the veteran minimum, a jaw-dropping pay cut for a player who'd been the highest-paid man in football 5 years earlier. It was, in football terms, a prove-it deal at 35 years old, a stage most stars of his caliber never have to experience twice. He responded by having a genuinely solid season, helping stabilize a Pittsburgh offense and reminding the league he could still play. It wasn't a storybook redemption. The Steelers finished 10-7 and lost in the wildcard round, but it was enough to convince another team to bet on him. In 2025, Wilson signed a 1-year deal with the New York Giants worth $10.5 million guaranteed, with incentives that could push it past $20 million. It wasn't Broncos money. It wasn't even close, but it was a real contract from a real team for a player some had already written off. Then, in June 2026, Wilson made the call himself. No press conference, no drawn-out farewell tour, just a video posted to social media announcing his retirement after 14 NFL seasons. He walked away with a Super Bowl ring, 10 Pro Bowl selections, nearly 47,000 passing yards, and, according to salary trackers like SpotTrack and Over the Cap, somewhere between $315 and $317 million in career on-field earnings, one of the highest totals in NFL history, trailing only a handful of names like Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers. He didn't retire poor. He didn't retire broke. He retired, by almost any measure, one of the wealthiest players ever to step onto an NFL field. That's the twist we're sitting with. The lost $100 million headline captures the shape of what happened to Russell Wilson. The fall from a record-breaking contract to a league minimum deal, the public humiliation of being benched and cut by a team that had bet everything on him. But the actual money story is stranger and more interesting than a simple loss. It's a story about a record-setting accounting failure that belonged mostly to the Broncos, and a very real professional collapse that belonged to Wilson. Two different disasters tangled together in the same $85 million. What Wilson actually lost wasn't his fortune, it was his grip on being considered one of football's untouchable elite. And what he did afterwards, taking a veteran minimum deal at 35, grinding through a redemption season in Pittsburgh, and finishing his career on his own terms in New York before walking into a broadcasting job at CBS Sports, is arguably the more compelling story than any number ever could be. The Broncos are the ones who are still talking about the money. As of 2026, then they're only just cleared the last of that $85 million dead cap charge off their books, more than 2 years after cutting him loose, a scar that shaped their roster decisions for seasons afterwards. Russell Wilson, meanwhile, was already moving on to the next chapter, microphone in hand. Sometimes the real story isn't about what somebody lost, it's about who's still paying for it.